As the standoff in the Strait of Hormuz deepens, two very different dramas are playing out at once. One above the waves in test ranges and aircraft bays, and another on the water itself, where tankers, tolls, and seizures are reshaping the calculus of regional power. Tonight, we trace the lines between them, an unannounced rush to expand long-range strike options, the contest over a vital shipping choke point, and the strain of a high-intensity campaign on America's war stocks. In Southern California last month, a small but significant experiment unfolded. Naval officials say an F-A-18 Super Hornet launched a new variant of the Joint Direct Attack Munition, a turbojet-powered winged version billed as a long-range JDAM, now reported with the designation GBU-75. In its flight described by service and industry sources, the weapon left the Point Mugu Sea Range and flew roughly 200 nautical miles before reaching its target, a flight that reportedly validated both the propulsion and JDAM systems required for longer standoff missions. If those reports hold, the GBU-75, a JDAM-LR in industry shorthand, represents a deliberate move to give tactical aircraft an extended reach without the cost, complexity, or inventory constraints of full-blown cruise missiles. By fitting a proven GPS-guided guidance package with deployable wings and a small turbojet, the weapon effectively becomes a low-cost, air-lodged cruise option. Accurate over long distances, able to maneuver en route, and intended to be carried in greater numbers by fourth-generation fighters. Designers and defense officials say that approach is meant to bridge a gap, a middle tier between short-range gravity munitions and expensive, scarce cruise missiles. Timing is the key. The test occurred as U.S. forces have been operating under a tactical pause with Iran, a truce that has not resolved the underlying contest over maritime control. Yet the Pentagon's quiet flight trial suggests planners are preparing NG for a different future, one in which aircraft can hold targets at sea at much greater ranges, and where placing mines or striking ships from safe standoff distances becomes a routine option. In the words of industry spokespeople, the idea is to bring the cruise missile concept to the JDAM family at a lower cost, enabling larger inventories and more flexible use in wartime. For navies operating in contested littorals, that flexibility changes the math. Instead of relying solely on a narrow set of costly cruise missiles, commanders could load strike packages with multiple long-range, GPS-guided munitions, dispersing risk and increasing salvo sizes. In practice, that could allow fighters to carry more weapons into theater without emptying the nation's dwindling stocks of more sophisticated missiles. And it could complicate an adversary's defenses. A dense, lower-cost attack wave is a very different problem for missile interceptors and layered air defenses than a small number of HIG, H-value cruise missiles. Yet the backdrop to those tests is unmistakable. Waterways blocked, an economy of tolls emerging at sea, and a shadow fleet still moving the oil revenues that sit at the center of this conflict. Iranian officials have made a point of turning control of the Strait of Hormuz into a political and economic lever. A senior parliamentary official, Hamidreza Hajibabia, announced that Iran had already taken in revenue from tolls imposed on ships transiting the strait. He said the first revenue received from the Strait of Hormuz tolls was deposited into the central bank account. That statement, short, concrete, and deliberately public, makes clear that Tehran is not only posturing. By monetizing transit, Iran is signaling an intent to normalize a new order at the choke point, inspected, screened, and taxed passage, rather than the free global flow that underpins energy markets. The Strait of Hormuz is not beside the story. It is at its center, the corridor carry. It's roughly one-fifth of the world's oil and gas flows, and any sustained disruption ripples through prices, insurance costs, and global trade routes. Against that backdrop, American forces have moved beyond confrontation inside the strait itself. Over recent weeks, U.S. naval and maritime interdiction teams have seized multiple vessels alleged to be transporting Iranian crude or otherwise violating sanctions. One seizure of a large crude carrier identified in reporting as the MT Majestic was said to have been conducted in the wider Indian Ocean, far beyond the narrow channel of Hormuz. Officials urged that the Majestic carried nearly 2 million barrels of oil. Similar figures were attached to another seized vessel, the MT Tafani. Taken together, these operations are meant to choke off the revenue lines that finance Tehran's military activities. Those interdictions have also fed a narrative of escalating maritime control and countermeasures. U.S. rhetoric has been stark. at public appearances and in social media. Senior American voices have asserted control of the waterway and warned of punitive measures. One prominent statement put it bluntly. Trump declared, "We have total control over the Strait of Hormuz. No ship can enter or leave without the approval of the United States Navy. It is sealed up tight until such time as Iran is able to make a deal." Words like that are designed to project deterrence. They are also a message to the global commercial community. The transit regime is no longer business as usual, but words meet reality at sea, and Tehran has shown it intends to back its claims with both policy and force. The tolls and the seizures have already forced some shipping lines to reroute, seek alternative insurance, or delay operations, raising costs and complicating logistics across the region. At the same time, US-10, USH across the region, military logistics are undergoing a less public crisis. Multiple media reports and Pentagon statements have put a spotlight on rapidly declining stocks of precision munitions after weeks of intensive strikes, and intercepts warn that some key categories of missiles and interceptors have been consumed at unprecedented rates, a reality that explains why the military is accelerating trials of lower-cost, long-range options. The figures cited across reporting are stark. A significant percentage of certain precision inventories has allegedly been expended, and some production lines are running at full tilt but cannot be scaled overnight. The result is a scramble for capacity. Defense officials have reportedly approached major American manufacturers, including automakers and other heavy industry firms, to see whether assembly lines can be retooled to produce missiles, loitering munitions, or components at scale. The objective is simple: shorten the time to replenish stocks and disperse reliance away from a handful of specialized contractors. The kinds of weapons singled out as critical are familiar: Intercepto, RS that protect forces and cities from ballistic threats, theater strike systems used to hit targets ashore, and the Tomahawk-class cruise missiles used for precision deep strike missions. Shortfalls in those areas force commanders to consider alternatives: lower-cost attack options, volume over single-shot precision, and a heavier reliance on air-launched and truck-launched loitering options. That thinking is precisely what helps explain why a JDAM variant with wings and an engine suddenly looks so attractive. It promises reach, accuracy, and numbers. But there are no easy fixes. Reconfiguring Detroit factories to build military ordnance is a long, complex process. Tooling, quality control, explosive handling, safety, software and guidance integration, these are not the sort of capabilities you can produce overnight without rigorous oversight. Officials say replenishing some missile stocks could take months or even years, depending on demand, subcontractor capacity, and export control. The friction between battlefield needs and industrial reality is a central feature of any sustained high-intensity conflict in the modern era. Across the region, Iran seeks to turn its own resilience into spectacle. Public displays of missile hardware and parades of strategic arms have punctuated the political narrative inside Tehran. On April 21st, state outlets circulated images and footage showing ballistic missiles on the move in several cities. Those events were presented not simply as military pageantry, but as a statement of continued deterrence. Iran's speed in updating and reloading missile and drone launchers have surpassed even its pre-war pace. Sayed Majid Musavi, identified as an IRGC aerospace commander, said he added, since the ceasefire began on April 11th, the United States has had to bring in ammunition from the other side of the world in a trickle. They have lost this phase of the war as well. They have lost the Strait, they have lost Lebanon, and they have lost the entire region. Whether those claims are strictly borne out by independent assessments is the subject of intense debate between intelligence analysts, military planners, and regional observers. What is clear is that Iran is using both kinetic and narrative means to demonstrate that it can weather pressure, replenish stocks, and signal vulnerability in American posture. The video releases showing underground launchers and repair operations are intended to broadcast endurance, a message to domestic audiences and foreign capitals that Tehran's strike infrastructure remains active even under duress. For U.S. planners, the core question is operational: how to prevent a single point of failure from defining strategic outcomes. If missile inventories narrow and if interdictions at sea are extended or made routine, then a balanced approach must combine diplomatic pressure, legal interdiction, and technological adaptation. The JDAM LR tests point to one technological answer: buy low, large numbers of lower-cost, air-launched precision weapons that can be fielded quickly and used in volume, but there are limits. GPS guidance, for example, can be jammed or spoofed. High-value targets may demand higher survivability or terminal seeker solutions, and layered air defenses remain a persistent problem for standoff weapons of all kinds. Meanwhile, the economics of the Strait are being rewritten in real time. The move to charge tolls and the admission that revenue has already been collected introduces a new instrument of coercion, make passage expensive or administratively impossible, and you squeeze the belly of economies far from the Gulf. Energy markets, freight carriers, and insurers all watch closely because rerouting tens of millions of barrels of oil or finding substitute shipping lanes is costly and time-consuming. On the legal front, the seizures of tankers accused of moving illicit cargoes raise complex questions about jurisdiction, evidence, and the proper role of naval interdiction in peacetime or near peacetime. The vessels that have been taken into custody, the legal filings attached to their cargoes, and the diplomatic responses that follow will shape how maritime law is interpreted in the coming months. For now, those operations are one of the few levers the United States and its partners have to choke off revenue streams without widening the conflict into full-scale war. What unfolds next will depend as much on industry as on strategy. If production lines can be rapidly expanded and new families of weapons fielded in the numbers required, American forces will reduce the pressure to use the highest value missiles sparingly. If not, commanders will be forced into harder choices, ration targets, prioritize assets, and accept greater risk in theaters where adversaries possess capable missile and drone arsenals. The theater commander's calculus is also tactical. Longer range, lower cost munitions enable strikes from safer standoff, but we do not absolve the need for surveillance, battle damage assessment, and resilient targeting networks. In other words, more reach without better sensing and decision cycles risk wasted, sorties, and misallocated munitions. The U.S. Navy's push to demonstrate new capabilities is therefore only one piece of a larger puzzle that includes logistics, intelligence, and the global supply chain. In a narrow sense, the tests of the GBU-75 and the public warnings about control of the Strait are tactical moves in a single campaign. Viewed more broadly, they reflect a deeper strategic contest over how naval power is projected in an era of constrained inventories and proliferating threats. The balance between expensive precision strike weapons and more distributed, affordable alternatives will shape force posture for years to come. As night falls over the Gulf and the world watches tanker tracks and satellite feeds, two realities are clear. The battlefield for sea lanes and oil revenue has moved into the open, and the demand for munitions and creative operational choices has never been higher. Whether the decisions taken now across air ranges, in shipyards, and in boardrooms will be enough to sustain a prolonged pressure campaign remains uncertain. What is certain is that the dynamics at sea, in production plants, and in diplomatic chambers are now inseparable elements of the same strategic contest. We will continue to follow the developments as they unfold, the tests, the seizures, the policy choices, and the industrial responses, because each will leave its mark on the balance of power, the cost of conflict, and the lives that depend on the safe passage of commerce through one of the planet's most consequential waterways.